Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Black and Abroad, an interview series highlighting the lived experiences of Black expats around the world. I'm Kendall, your host, licensed therapist, and a fellow Black expat. Today, we have another great episode in store for you, and I would like to welcome to Black and Abroad, Olivia Nadine. Say hey, Olivia.
Hello.
Hey, it's okay. So where are you joining us from? What country are you in right now?
I'm in China, in Beijing.
All right. So we're in the same place, people, because we're friends. So I want to just introduce the world, give a brief intro for Olivia. Olivia has been an active member of the expat community since moving to Beijing in May of 2016. In May of 2017, she was co-led for a 2-day event called Umoja that was purposed to bring WeChat connections into real life and create a space for dialogue, art, and community. This was the first event of many dedicated to building community, as is the focal point of all of her work. She has gone on to start a soulful concept, which I love, BlackEXPO, and an all-natural skincare brand. So I would once again like to welcome Olivia to Black and Abroad. How are you today?
I'm all right. I took a nap. I had a half day at work. Took a nap.
Okay, listen. Okay. Oh, yeah, because we're just off the heels of Chinese New Year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So to begin, I always like to ask guests, who is Olivia?
And I am terrible at answering that question. But so I am a native of Washington, D.C. I am the child of Gregory and Yvonne, who raised me to be independent and fearless, and who still encourage me, even though they want me home. They now trying to encourage me to come back. Originally, they encouraged me to go. They brought my first trip abroad, which was graduation, 2008 from high school. They got me a 3-week trip to go to Europe. So I've been traveling for a long time, and I've been out and abroad, aspiring entrepreneur. You mentioned the things that I'm known for, but I've been doing entrepreneurship since I was a kid. I remember when those Nokia chunky phones came out, I made like the jean patches. I took old jeans that we were going to throw away, took them, sewed them up, and made them into cell phone pouches for my mom and her friends. So aspiring entrepreneur, native of Washington, D.C., and just someone out here dedicated to the community and the people in it.
That sounds quite amazing, to be such an enterprising individual, always having that bug for wanderlust. I wonder, what do you think your future looks like in terms of being able to travel if we didn't have like COVID everywhere?
I'm about to say I always say in the pre-times, so hopefully in the post times. Well, moving back home is on the list of things to do. And one of the things I want to do, my family has a travel company that does trips to Africa, like West Africa and East Africa. So I want to be able to go back and help them like expand their offerings of kind of what they do. Now, their current clientele is different than I think the clientele that we could build into. And so I want to help them build into that like expanded clientele. So then I would travel more of the continent. I've been to Africa. I went to Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania in 2019 on a 5-week solo trip. And that was really fun. Like Tanzania has replaced Bali as my like go-to destination. Zanzibar above everything. Oh my goodness.
I love
it's Bali but Black. So like why not?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I was in Kenya, I stayed at a water marine reserve, and we got to go snorkeling. Oh. And I mean, it was like dipping your head into National Geographic. It was the clearest, bluest water, and we got to like spot the dolphins. You could swim with them, but we at least spotted them. And it was Bali but Black, and that was really nice. I love Bali, don't get me wrong. But then when I found there's a Black version of Bali, I was like, sign me up.
So it sounds like you felt more at home, a deeper sense of connection with all the accoutrements of other great countries.
Yeah. And I got to meet just cool people. Yeah.
How do you think that that trip shaped you?
It it just expanded my lived experience. I laugh because there were some parts that were like, I was on a bus going from Moshi, Tanzania to Dar es Salaam, and the bus broke down maybe an hour and a half into the trip. I definitely had a full-on panic attack and thought of every negative image I had seen of Africa and was like, I'm not trying to die out here. And then literally nothing bad happened, nothing. And I actually got like a really good friend out of it. In Swahili, there's a word for like sister, dada. And so like every time I see her, like that's my dada. I stayed with her in Moshi and she was like, just call me when you get to Dar es Salaam. So I just messaged her, hey, the bus broke down, but they said it'll be however long. And this woman managed to not only track down me, but know when the next bus was coming, told them who I was so that when I got on this next bus, they were like, hey, your sister called us, let her know that you're on the bus. And she organized for a driver to help get me to where I was going in Dar es Salaam so that I was never confused. I didn't have to like be lost. And this is someone I met on a Facebook travel group. I think it was like the Travel Africa Movement group. And it just shows how, one, they're just awesome, amazing, wonderful people all around the world. So if you're ever in Moshi, let me know. Moshi is at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro. So if anyone ever wants to go to Kilimanjaro, let me know. And I will definitely pass you on to her because she'll make sure that you are taken care of like 100%. But there's just awesome people all around the world. And that the more you travel, the more you realize that there's beauty and wonderfulness. Just if you want to find it, you can find it. Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that story and that perspective. That's part of the reason why this particular platform was created, was to let the world see that there's so much, to our culture, to our community, how we see the world, how we live our lives, our perspectives on mental health, that we're very much a layered community of people. And just to be able to own our own narrative, I think is a really important thing. So I really appreciate that. I'd love to go to Kilimanjaro whenever the world opens up. I just would like a 5-star hotel attached to that.
I think therefore I am. I think I'm in a 5-star hotel. Therefore I am in a 5-star.
I think, and I want to be. So let me ask you, tell us, I know that you gave a little foray into your introduction to traveling and things, but what was it that kind of solidified your journey into becoming an expat, like more full-time?
Honestly, I've always wanted to live abroad. I remember in junior high school, I wanted to be a fashion designer. And I was like, where am I going to go? I don't want to be in Italy. I'm going to go to the UK. I'm going to fashion school in London. And I told my mom, it's like, Mom, I'm going to like the UK for college. And she's like, okay. I didn't, but like the seeds were planted early that this child was not going to stay here. So, yeah. And I studied abroad every year of college. I was fortunate enough to be able to do that, except for freshman year. But sophomore year, I did a 2-week trip to Hong Kong. And my junior year, I did a semester in China, which is how I got hooked on China. And then I did an internship in China in the summer between junior and senior year with the State Department. And then I did, I guess it's kind of a capstone class for my senior year. We did a marketing class and it culminated within a 1-week, 10-day trip to Peru. And so the whole trip was about supporting the social enterprise with our marketing class, what we learned in the marketing class, so that they can market better, so that the women that are doing the goods and the crafts are able to make more income through better marketing. So every time in every of those trips, I learned something new. I was with different people. I was expanding in a different way. And I just continued to grow. And I just knew like travel was it. Like I wasn't looking back. And then when I did Teach for America in the US. And when I finished, I was like, what do I want to do next? Where did I feel? I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. So then I thought about, how do I want to feel? And so I knew I wanted to feel the most aligned and I wanted to feel the most growth and excitement. And if I didn't know what I wanted to do, at least I knew where I felt those things. And so I knew I felt that when I done study abroad in Beijing. And so I was like, all right, we're going back to Beijing. And so did grad school and then came back in 2016 and haven't looked back until maybe COVID, when things slowed down a lot and family was kind of over it with me being gone. Which, I mean, people are getting older, and then there's new babies being born. And so it's like, I get it. I definitely miss my family, but they've known for a while that I was the one to get the passport and get gone.
Right. Having that traveler spirit. I think what
Yeah.
you're sharing is the common sentiment that everyone has said, that there's always been a deep abiding pull to see what else is out there in the world, you know, to plant your roots somewhere other than the United States, and really just to tap into like your inner strength and be able to grow these things outside of our home communities. And everybody has also said, but things post-COVID have really changed perspectives and feelings, and it's making a decision about what does it look like to stay and what does it look like to return, and does return mean indefinite? So I think that we're all at these inflection points of change, and change can be scary, but change doesn't have to be bad, right?
Yeah.
One of the things I really like that you just said is that you didn't necessarily know 100% what you wanted to do, but you know how you wanted to feel. And I applaud that, right? Having that level of awareness that in this place, I feel more like myself. I feel the most. How did you feel? Like, you know, first coming to China, what were some of those thoughts, feelings, sensations that you were able to tap into?
Funny enough, I came to China with my security blanket because when I'll tell the story shortly as quickly as possible, but I came to China thinking, okay, I'm gonna be with 10 other students. I went to Ohio State, big old school. The business school was like, I think 6,000 of the students. So that's still a pretty decent sized college. And they were like, yeah, there's gonna be at least 10, 20 other kids who are also going. So, you know, you'll have some kind of commonality with people. And I was like, great, that sounds great. I told my mother about the trip. She's like, all right, cool. Let me know what we need to do. And, you know, we'll try to make it happen because we really know you wanna do like sacrifice for children is something that like my parents really demonstrated. And so it comes time, I'm getting ready, and they're like, so you're the only one. I was like, swerve, say what?
20 to 1.
Like for me, my major was international business. And so the language that I chose was Chinese. I said I graduated high school in 2008. So 2008 was right when the Beijing Olympics had happened. Beijing had been 7 years in the WTO, so the economy was popping and everyone was talking about China for business and all the growth opportunities. You know, as Americans, we've all taken French or Spanish in high school. So either it clicked then or it didn't.
Spanish, that's my minor.
And so I was like, Spanish ain't clicking. I tried to take Arabic. Arabic wasn't clicking. So I was like, Chinese makes sense. So I'd already had the Chinese language background by then. So I was like, China makes the most sense to go for study abroad.
Right.
So I wasn't going to change that. And I called my mom. I was like, Mom, I think I said it just like that. I was like, Mom, I'm the only one. And she said, okay, we'll come too. And my mom, my aunt, two of my aunts, and my pastor, all women, all decided they were going to do their own women's trip, 10-day women's trip. At the same time, I'm going over to do my study abroad. So I did have the benefit of being eased into the transition. I had a really cool roommate, which was great. And her parents also dropped her off. Wow. So we both had parents that dropped us off, which was cool. So it wasn't awkward, like anyone was avoiding each other, that we didn't see each other a whole lot the first week. But I remember I got sick on, I don't know, like day 4 or something. I don't know what I ate, but I was able to, instead of call my mom and crying, I was able to go to her hotel room and call her from the bed and be like, Mama.
Right, say that.
So, but she also had her own time with her friends. Like, it wasn't like, I'm here to watch over you and she's like, you good? And then they did their own thing. And so I was eased into that transition, which was really nice. And I eased into good friendships. And so it took maybe what could have been a lot of culture shock from day 0. It took what could have been a lot of anxiety from like the jump. And I had a much easier transition and I eased into fun. And once we got started, my roommate was from Italy. And then another good friend of ours, she is Dutch-born Chinese. And then we hung out with these French guys, and then there were some other Americans. And just one within that group alone, the dynamics of what was open, what was accessible, like European women actually link arms with their friends and walk around. And it's just like a natural intimacy within your friendship. That's it. It's just friendship, strictly platonic friendship. But in America, if you are that close with, even if it's the same gender, there's like, is it a romantic thing? There's more like assumptions. There's less purity to it. And it was even just small little things like that, learning how to communicate with different people. And then we were all in China experiencing it, and we all experienced it differently. My friend who's Dutch-born Chinese, she speaks a dialect, but she doesn't speak Mandarin. So for her, and we would go out, and I told you I'd already taken like at least a year and a half of Chinese by this point. So I wasn't great, but I was actually better at Mandarin than she was. But people would walk up to her and start speaking to her in Chinese and Mandarin. And she's like, and she turns to me what they say. And then I'm the one that's actually saying, like, talking, and they're like, everyone's got cognitive dissonance. And it's just totally. But then I'm experiencing things like people coming and like staring at my skin and like brown skin. And I'm like, oh, this is what really happens. Okay. And like, but my friends see it and they're like, what is even going on? So I don't have to make them understand, but I'm also still experiencing it differently in real time than they are. And so even that was kind of an expansion of how life is, whether it's people who are also from Western countries, but they just have friendships and intimacies that are deeper, and there's without questioning it. And that was just a really pivotal moment, because in America, we're very friendly people, but we're not very intimate people.
I think depending on where you're from, friendly is a spectrum.
I don't know, because yes, I mean, I can't generalize a whole country of a few 100 million people, but I just feel like on the whole, and this is something I've heard from other foreigners that go to America, they're like, Americans will talk to you easily. We'll start a conversation easy. But when it comes time to like sharing vulnerability, sharing deeper truths, even just being physically close to someone and like leaning on them or holding someone's hand. I was walking with a friend the other day, and she reaches out and she literally just grabs my hand, and I was like, what's happening? I had forgotten. And she's from Burundi. But it's just like, just a different way of living, just different experiences, and just being open to that. And so being in China was all these different experiences happening all within one place. Not only the Chinese culture that was going on, but just being able, because it's such a cosmopolitan place, being able to experience other world cultures also on a daily basis. And so it was just an opening and an expanding. I didn't like everything. I didn't love everything, but it just reminded me there's a different lens to look through life.
I agree with that. And I think one of the key components to what you're saying is that you are choosing to do that, right? You're not necessarily actively fighting against, the cultural norms and the way that people exist here, as many foreigners do.
That's exhausting.
So exhausting. Like, I've had a few China days myself where it's just a lot. Yeah. And it feels very difficult. Somebody that's fiercely independent like myself does not feel like that living in this country on most days. I mean, I'll call you, can you translate this? I don't even know how to buy tickets to the last outing that we had yesterday. It just feels, it's really humbling. It's a really humbling experience.
I definitely the more I live out here, the more I'm like, all right, I'm not at home. Right. And just like, so I'm not at home. And it's kind of like you go over to your friend's house. How do they do things over there? I had a neighbor, when I went over their house, I had to take my shoes off at the door. And I was like, I'm not at home. I got to take off my shoes when I get out the door there. And sometimes now that I go back home, I do take my shoes off at the door. My mom's like, why are your shoes blocking the doorway? Because I've adapted. That's something I've taken on. Right. But there are some things I still am very like, this is China and I don't like it. Like when I'm biking, I'm like, y'all better learn how to be in a lane. Yo, why y'all turning from the outside? Y'all are turning from the inside going. So there's still things, but I think I've just learned I'm not at home and I can't expect things to be the way I want it to be at home. And that's freed me up from so much. But I've also been coming and going for 12 years. So I feel at some point, I got to realize I'm not at home at some point.
For sure.
Yeah.
What that sounds like to me is that you've learned the art of acceptance, and what we call radical acceptance. This is what it is. This is where I am. This is what I chose. So how do I make the best of it? And just knowing that every day is not going to be great, but I think more days are great than not. So yeah, I think learning how to extrapolate the good that you are, able to acquire and not hang on to the things that aren't working or that are frustrating. I've witnessed, with you that's something that I see you do. And I appreciate that a lot.
That serenity prayer is like, I don't even know the words anymore, but it's just in me.
For sure. I have it on a keychain that my mom gave me when I started driving. And I was just having to say that a lot, coming to China, working in international schools, which are, for all intents and purposes, private schools, something that I said when I entered into education, I would never do. And then coming here and doing that and realizing that there are challenges that they face that are vastly different than the population of students that I worked with when I was back home. It's just the nature of the setup, and it's a shift in thinking and understanding when it comes to how to support students over here, or working in whatever field you choose to work in when you come to China. Because everybody I know is in education but has some sort of side hustle, and we'll definitely get to that in just a second. So I'm curious, you've been here for a minute. What do you think in your accumulation of experiences has been one of the most impactful that you've experienced?
You mentioned it. I mean, other than my initial experience being here, you mentioned it in my introduction about Umoja. Umoja was the first event I was one of the leads on. I had helped other people with their events before, so it's easy to help other people with their own ideas. It's not vulnerable at all. Like, you're just like, yeah, sure, whatever. What do you need me to do? But to be the one or one of the two people pulling people together, proposing the idea, realizing you can't run from leadership, and trying to take what was only here and turn it into ticket sales and people and panels and events that people are actually in and sitting in. It was a lot. And some of the people we still talk, some of the people we don't talk anymore. Some people didn't want to do the next project I did after it because they're like, yeah, nah, we one and done. But I learned a tremendous amount. I learned if I'm gonna propose ideas, I need to then have the leadership to back it up. Forget all the other resources. Like, I thought I could be like, hey guys, I think we should do this. And then just like be like, okay. And it was like, no, like, guide what you're saying, and we still are all equal partners, but like, you're like the 51% and we're like the 49%. And I'm like, oh, okay. Cause I always felt they'd always had more gravitas. These are people who had been in Beijing longer than I had. I felt like they had stronger networks, longer networks, but Umoja was a 2-day event where a lot of people, if you're in China, then WeChat is the app. WeChat is WhatsApp plus Facebook plus Instagram plus Venmo.
Apple Pay.
All in one. Like, it's all in one. Because you send money, you get money, you add people. At my current job now, it's all based on WeChat. I'm like, where's the email server? Like, nothing. So you have all these groups, and a group can be 500 people. So it can be a huge group, but people kind of stay in their little pockets. And so it felt like, okay, there's this clique that does the academic events. There's this clique that does the artsy events. There's this one that does like the party social events. There's this one that's like for the Black women, but no one really crosses and no one really comes together. And so it's all these little pockets, but When I saw it, I was like, well, what if we had a place where we all get to actually meet each other? Because especially this was 2016, 2017, when I would meet a lot of people and they were like, oh, hi, what's your name? And what's your name? And then let's add you on WeChat. And you realize, oh, we're already on WeChat with each other. And like, you're actually already WeChat friends. And you realize how flimsy that title really is. It's not even really a title. And so we wanted to pull people together. So I did it with Aisha, who I think might be on a future episode. I don't know. But she was the Chargé d'Affaires at Trinidad and Tobago. And so she had a really wonderful network, and she established the Black Women in Beijing group. And at that point, I didn't have any groups to my name other than like my friends. And pulled together Africa 2.0, and they did a lot of the academic and intellectual panel discussions about the future of Africa. Pulled together Black Gen. They did a lot of the cultural and arts kind of oriented events. Pulled together Ambush Entertainment. They did the social side. And I want to say there was one more group. Oh, the Caribbean community came in as well. And I hope I'm not forgetting anybody so I don't get yelled at. But we all came together and we kind of put our heads together. And each group kind of paired up with another group, and they all kind of did a thing. So Africa 2.0 and Black Gen paired together to do the first day where we had a panel on kind of Black in China. And during the panel and the event, Black Gen organized that an artist, Mika, would do a live painting, and they would auction off the live painting. And so that was day one. And then day two, we did like a potluck where we patroned a couple of Black-owned food businesses in the area. And we all, either you could bring your own food or you can patron them and just pre-order. And we delivered it there, had it at the park in Chaoyang. And then that night we had the after party, which was led by Ambush. And so it was a really cool mix of, do you want to get intellectual? Do you want to just chill? Do you want to turn up? And kind of featuring all the different sides. We had people who traveled up, because there weren't really many people doing things for the full community instead of the fragments of the community. And so as messy as it was on the internal, and I admit it, and if you ask anybody, they admit it too, because I definitely had a failure in leadership. So as messy as that was on the inside, we still pulled it off, and we still had a really great turnout. And so I can only imagine, had I been more willing to step up in my leadership role and been just more prepared for what that meant and really encouraged everyone else more, like it could have been even bigger. But it was still a really successful event for what it was. And that was really enjoyable. And it just expanded my mind of, you can have a single idea and actually make it reality. And It was the first time that I had like an idea that was truly outside of myself. Not like, oh, I want to get to this college, or I want to earn this much money, I want to get this much job, but I can have an idea that truly encompasses a community and it is positively impactful for that community. And that was really the first time I'd had that kind of realization.
Thank you for sharing that. You know, one of the things I kept hearing you say is, if I would just do this as far as leadership and me and leadership and my leadership. But I hope the one thing that's not discounted is you were the one that sparked the idea, right? Everybody can't do that. And it is a difficult task to bring together adults with varying degrees of perspective and ego and outcome. So I'm wondering, when you think of this impactful moment, because that definitely did lead you into the direction that you are right now, and I'm pretty sure that that's going to continue to expand, well into your future. Suppose you continue to grow in that leadership role, what are some things that you will notice to be different?
Realizing that it's okay for me to be in charge. And I say that because I've been called many things. Some I've taken hold of, some I haven't. But I have a strong personality, and I can sometimes have a dominant personality in a conversation, and I'm aware of it more. And I think I was over aware of it then. And I really knew that these were very much intelligent people that like, I wanted to hear from them. And so I thought the way to do it was to like be hands off. But actually the better way to do it is to be, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's, if you've ever done pottery, you guide the clay, you don't force the clay. And so you allow the clay to also tell you the shape it wants to become, as wiggly woogly as that sounds. And so giving the people the structure that they might need to know, okay, this is what she wants us to see, but this is where we can flourish, instead of just being like, all right, guys, I want to do this, but if y'all do it the way you want to do it, and it's too loose of a structure, because then you have so many different competing perspectives and so many different competing viewpoints. I needed to give everyone a single lens to work through that they then filter through and show their talents and their strengths. And so looking at things that I've done since then with BlackEXPO, learning how to lean into the leadership and also working with a smaller team. That's also one of the things is just instead of bringing everyone together on the planning side, bring everyone together at the event and allow them to all coalesce at the event instead. But just also not being afraid of who I am. I'm a naturally louder person. I'm naturally opinionated, and finding a way that I can still communicate with people in a way that they feel warm, that they feel welcome, that they feel heard, but also not being so afraid of how I am that I go in an opposite direction that's actually more unhelpful.
So embracing
just
who
learning.
You are.
Yeah. Self-awareness has never been a weak point for me. It's always sometimes been maybe too self-aware that it gets in my head.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you can be too self-aware, but I think that can turn into criticism, right? If we then feel we have to fit into a certain version of ourselves for certain groups of people, or, you know, stifle the innate strength that we have, that can potentially get in the way when it comes to self-awareness, or not feeling that you're ready to assume sometimes these roles that are thrust upon you. But I'm a firm believer in the things that are for you will come to you when they're supposed to. And even as I sit and say that, I get angry at the thought of having to wait on some things, and then at the thought of, you know, having to spearhead certain things that I didn't necessarily think I was ready for at that moment, but time obviously proved that I was. And I think that's, based off what you're sharing, has also proven to be the truth for you.
Yeah.
So through these, you're obviously talking about like your creative pursuits. What are some of the multitude of things that you're engaged in creatively in Beijing?
All right. So from Umoja was born the idea for BlackEXPO. And so BlackEXPO is a market that is hopefully continuing to grow, but currently stands as a market that is for, oh yes, sorry, my pen. It is a market for for Black entrepreneurs, whether Black American, Black African, Caribbean, European, but for all of us to come together and showcase and support. And so we did the very first one in March 30th, 2018. So if we're able to pull it off again this next March, then that will be our 4th year anniversary. And that'll be 4 years, which is crazy. It was supposed to be a one-off event. And then as people were leaving, they were like, when's the next one? We had over 500 people for the first one, and a lot of people traveled from outside of Beijing. I think the furthest was someone came from the furthest was someone came from the US. We had a guy who came from Compton. Tyson Amir. He is a poet and an educator. He came out from Compton, and he sold his book and wrote his book, and he's performed some of his spoken word pieces. Yeah. And then we had people from Guangzhou. In Shanghai, we had someone come from South Korea. And so it's been really fun. We've done it in Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen. We were super excited in 2019, and we're like, we're gonna take over the world. And then 2020 happened, as it did everywhere. Yeah. And it was like trying to get the wind back in our sails after that. That was probably the toughest thing. But we did BlackEXPO. And I also do a soul food concept out here based on Tianmi Bakery. So I did Tianmi Bakery since 2017, actually. Did the first event for it in 2018 with Chicken and Waffles Brunch, and have been doing pop-up events around the city ever since then. I'm supposed to have one on Sunday. Fingers crossed, people book tickets. And it's going to be spades and soul food so that people can like throw down on the table and throw down on the plate. And then the last one I do is on skin. So my name is Olivia Nadine, but it also goes on your skin. And it's my all natural skincare line. So whipped shea butter, and right now it's just 2 products, but it's slowly expanding, but whipped shea butter and body butter. And I kind of stumbled into that. Had a friend who was leaving because of COVID. She's like, hey, I got 17 kgs of shea butter. You want it? And I was like, how much? And the price was too low to pass up. So I was like, yes. And I've always been hands-on and crafty. So watched a lot of YouTube videos about how to do it. And I do it where I don't use any chemicals, no water. So it's purely all natural oils. And that's really taken off because Beijing winters are dry. And people have really come around to the idea of shea butter is not only for Black people. It's amazing. I have to say that. But, you know, you got to teach people that what's good for my skin.
Educate the masses.
It's like what's good for my skin can also be good for your skin. And so that's been a really booming business. Body butter has taken off this year. So yeah, those are the main 3 things I think that I do if I'm not popping up with something else. And just whenever I can, I don't even do it for business, but I love helping people with develop their businesses. So I've done a couple of masterminds out here and just like a little bit of consulting for people, and just because I love business strategy. Like I said, that was my major in college. Business has been, China and business have been the through streams in everything I've done. So I think that's everything. Probably something else.
Yeah, and I can definitely say that they've been successful. I've done and I do this for anybody that I consider a friend and that is reputable and consistent. Lots of people that I've worked with have been able to, enjoy her delicacies at both the jobs that I've had out here. And I would imagine in the third one that I will have as well. Because it's just something about being able to support people that follow through, that are consistent, that are role models in the skills that they try to put out there and the businesses that they show to the world, right? And that do things to impact others positively. So never
You're
have a problem.
definitely an MVP customer. Absolutely. Like free shipping for life.
I don't even need that. I'm just saying, like, I don't know, it's just a thing being taught that you do what you can to support others, to help other people, and not even for the return, but it does come back to you in spades. So it's just, if you can do your part to help other people grow in areas that they're trying to, you lose nothing. So you gain a lot more.
I love that.
Right. So I'm curious, being a Black woman living abroad is not for the faint of heart. Any Black woman that's living in any country, I think that we can all share that sentiment. And so when it comes to the concept of community and chosen family, how has that evolved for you while living in the various places that you live in, and specifically China?
I came out here, at least when I came out to move, I came out here knowing I didn't know anybody. Like my friends who I did study abroad with, they had long gone. And my job was a new job that I was coming out here for. So I didn't know anyone from the job. I had for my master's, I did Asian studies. And so I did have China politics and security. So I did have some friends who were actually Chinese who were in my majors program who'd come back, but they were going to be in different parts. So I knew I was coming back not knowing. And I think because of the transition I had the first time, I wasn't as anxious. I didn't realize it was partly because I had my mom with me, but I wasn't as anxious. I wasn't worried about coming back. I got on the internet as much as I could and found like Madness and different brothers and sisters of China, and like asked all the questions I could about what to expect, because I figured it had changed in the 6 years since I had really lived here, and the other trips were more trips. And so I prepared as much as I could socially. And then WeChat was out here, which was really helpful. When I first came, there was no WeChat in 2010. So who you saw is who you knew.
Wow.
Right. And I think at that point, 2010, I think maybe Facebook had just been blocked. Google had just been blocked. So it was really like who you saw was who you knew and how you connected with people. Meanwhile, I come back 6 years later, WeChat is popping and you can get added in the groups all over the country and feel you know people. But I was really intentional about I have to get out of my head, get out of my like introversion and be aggressive and intentional about meeting people. Now, for an extrovert, it probably doesn't sound aggressive to be like, is anyone doing anything tonight? But for me, it felt very aggressive to be like, who wants to go to dinner? Because I knew I would be okay by myself, but up until a point and only for so long. So I had to be really intentional about it. And I remember maybe it was 2016 Thanksgiving. I came in May, and by 2016 Thanksgiving, I was like, I'm going to somebody's house for Thanksgiving. And I was in the groups and someone's like, hey, we're doing Thanksgiving at so-and-so's house. Didn't even know who so-and-so was. I was like, sign me up. I'll make a cake. and because it was potluck style. And so I was like, and that was actually how I met a lot of the people I ended up doing events with, who I then did a Mojo with, was getting in those and being really active and intentional. And I did a lot of different groups until I found the one that felt most my people, or at least people that I felt that I could be really comfortable around. It turned out that this is probably the Blackest experience I've had being in China, which it sounds really weird because you would think in China, it'd be the most Chinese experience I've had. But because I was so intent on looking for a place where I could feel like me, that just turned out to be for all the other Black kids who like being in Asia. We all happen to already be out here. But it took me being really intentional. And now I've actually had to go the other way, because now I found myself being more tired more often, more just needing space, more just needing to chill. And so now I'm trying to balance actually making sure that the desire to be social so that I do have community doesn't overweigh what I actually still need, which is me time and intentional quiet time, not just like what I do a lot, which is go down the YouTube rabbit holes of clicking this and auto playing that, but actual intentional journaling or just sitting. I have heated floors and I like to just sit and enjoy the heat on the floor and just rest in it. I don't know, it might sound weird, it might be TMI, but I really like that. And it calms me and like it helps me to chill. And like I appreciate my apartment again when I do that, instead of it just being this place I come to at home at night and I forget about it. I'm like, this took me a lot to get to this apartment. And like, it's been a journey because housing in China is a journey. Ooh, yeah. So I'm like, yeah, but for me, it's just been really intentional. I had to be aggressive. I knew who I was and I knew that person could be alone a lot, but I knew long-term that wouldn't be healthy for me. And I would feel sad, I would feel detached, but it would be something that I could actually control. So I was like, I have to make time, make effort to get out, to get to know people, and to let people in. That part took longer, but to at least get myself around other people, the letting people in part, I might have taken another year or two, but it happened.
Right, it's a process. It's a gradual process. It's not meant to happen overnight, because those that start really quickly fizzle out just as quick, right? And I think it sounds as if, this level of self-discovery that you're finding is the healthy way to doing it. And sometimes we do that on accident, but it really sounds as if you're using the word that I have for 2022. My personal word is being intentional. When it comes to really understanding what is it that you need to really be able to thrive, especially in this city, because Beijing is not a city for the faint-hearted at all. And understanding that community changes, and because the city is very transient, the individuals living here, or you learn as you begin to learn yourself, you learn that maybe those people that once provided that level of support and security and safety and friendship, it has run its course. And that I've noticed that happens a little bit more often than not, because I found a lot of people come to Beijing running from something. as opposed
Never
to
understood that.
running to, right? I'm running toward discovery. I'm seeking, what could my life look like as an expat, as opposed to I'm running from these things that I don't like, that have harmed me, that I don't understand. I want to reinvent myself completely. But I don't hear you doing that. And obviously I know you personally. So I think it's quite brave to be able to tell yourself, where I am at this point in my life is very different than where I was 3 or 4 years ago. And it's okay to engage in these newfound ways of being, because solitude is important for mental health, right? Intentional solitude is important for mental health, and knowing that your source isn't others. Identifying what that is, being comfortable with what that is at this juncture is really key to being able to appreciate when you are out. Like, I think we had a great time yesterday. We went to, where did we go? Van Gogh Alive. And so it's just like things like that, with the right people, obviously, kind of make the experience a bit more meaningful, I would say.
Yeah. Because I mean, if I wanted to go out to eat alone, I can. If I want to go, because I used to do that in the US. Like, if I wanted to go to the movies, I stopped asking. I would just go to the movies and like get matinee price and go. But out here, I'm like, well, I didn't come out here to do the same things I did at home alone. I mean, I can, but it's nice. I've actually learned to embrace that I actually want to be around people and to not feel any kind of way about needing people or anything like that. And so someone was actually, we were somewhere and I was doing something and someone was like, you really don't care what people think of you. And I was like, not really. I went through that in high school. And I remember if I walked in a room and people looked at me and then kept talking, my brain went, whoo,
right.
Social anxiety on 100. Now you live in a country where people definitely look at you every day.
Look at you, take pictures of you, record you without your permission, everything.
If I stayed in that mindset, I could not, I wouldn't be able to do anything. And so it's not that I don't care what people think about me. It's that if you don't tell me, I don't care. I don't know how that might come off to other people, but unless you bring an issue to me, I refuse to take it on. So if you bring something to me, a grievance, I did you wrong, you don't like the way I looked at you, if you tell me, I will take accountability. But until you tell me, like, I can't be worried about what everyone thinks or says or the looks I get. Because half the time, actually, 90% of the time, it's probably not actually about me. So it's really self-centered of me to think that, you looked at me and you talked, and so therefore you must be talking about me. You're probably not. You probably were looking past me anyway, and I was just in your line of sight. So I just remember that someone was like, you don't get stuck on what people think? I'm like, oh, you see me at a party? No, I don't get stuck on it. If the song is good, then I'm dancing. Like it is.
Especially if it's your own event. Like, let me show you how to enjoy this space.
I only go to 2 events, mine and a friend's. Like, that's it.
Okay. I think like there's a level of wanting to be perceived and understood from everybody, right? But when that need to have others see and perceive, and that appreciation or whatever from others outweighs your own internal thoughts and feelings, that's where the challenges can come about. And living here in Beijing, I would definitely say your sense of self is going to grow, because you're going to be challenged in ways that maybe you've never been challenged before. And this country, especially living in this city, affords you the opportunity, if you're up to it, to really do some internal work. I think living here and then matriculating back to wherever your home country is, you won't be the same. And I hope that a person wouldn't be the same individual, that they would have grown through this process, because you definitely get the opportunity to do that here.
if 25-year-old me, I was 25 when I came out here. 25-year-old me looked at me now, I think she'd be like, that's the same face, but who that? And in some ways, that I appreciate, in some ways that I might have deeper reflection on. But I came out here because it's an expansive place to be. It expands me, and it has expanded me in ways I anticipated and wanted, in ways I didn't anticipate, in ways I didn't want. But right. I've accepted all of them because even the worst situation, the worst relationship, I go for the lessons. That's why when I was talking about Umoja, I was like, okay, my leadership, because that is one of the big lessons I took from that, is that if I'm going to try to put forth a vision, I need to be willing and ready to lead said vision, or bring in people who can lead it, but know that the leadership needs to be accounted for. So that's why when I talk about Umoja, I go for the lesson that I learned from it. And that's how I've really learned to categorize even the most annoying of bad things that's happened or things I didn't like that happened. I'm like, okay, what lesson did I learn from this disastrous relationship that I was in? Like, I learned that I could do better at this, and I could do better. I don't look at what they could do. I look at, okay, well, what could I have done? How did I grow? If I could do it over, would I do it exactly the same way? Discounting the butterfly effect.
That's all you have control over anyway, is your role in it. So let me ask you, like, regarding mental health, growing up, what were some, this will be a multifaceted question, can you recall any messages or adages when it comes to mental health, and how do you believe your mental health has been shaped since living abroad?
I was reflecting on that question. I was trying to think about it. I would say on maybe my maternal side, it was kind of like, don't worry about it, that's the adults talking. And there were things that were happening that weren't necessarily mental health related in terms of an episode or anything like that, but just in general, things would happen and it was just like, oh, and I would find out and it's like, oh, we didn't tell you because we didn't want you to worry. We didn't want you to stress. We wanted you to just, do what you need to do so you could focus on yourself. And I always didn't like that because I always was like, let me decide if it's going to impact me. I still want to be able to know things. And that's why one of my pet peeves is when someone doesn't tell me something that's actually pertinent to me or gives me silent treatment. Those are two things that'll just, it's not good. But on my paternal side, actually, as I reflect, we've had family members that have had developmental issues, and those manifested in different ways. Some people were calm, some people had more erratic behavior, but at least it's something about the way my dad talks about family. Everyone is blood, everyone is family, and in a loving way, not in a dismissive way, but in the sense that it's not my step aunt or my step uncle, it's just my uncle. It's not my uncle with special needs, it's not my aunt with this, it's just my aunt and my uncle. And it's just a part of who they are. It might not be, it's never directly addressed. And that might just be the Southern of it, I don't know. But it's also not so hush hush. It's like, this is your uncle. Say hi. And you say hi. And because no one's saying this is your uncle with this, and you look and you're like, something is different. Something is there's a little secret sauce going on. But you're also not like, oh, I gotta stay away. Oh, you don't have to treat anyone different. So in those respects, I think my dad's just thinking about how my dad would talk about family and what I would see in my family. It's kind of just like, there's people and, maybe they have a thing, maybe they don't, but you still treat them with love and respect. And we don't really talk about it, I will say that, but you also don't pick on it and make it who they are.
Right.
In elementary school, we had a girl who was bipolar. And so I became familiar, I didn't understand, I'm not gonna pretend to say I understood, but I became at least familiar with the term and that it was a genuine thing. And it wasn't like we threw it around. It was genuinely she was diagnosed as bipolar and we knew that, but we didn't know exactly what it meant. But she did have a couple of episodes. So at least I saw it. No one really talks about it in terms of like, let me help you understand everything. But you're like, okay, there's people who have things, and sometimes things happen. But coming out here, I think the major things I had were like just, good old depression, being away from my family. As much as I did try to make sure I made friends, like I said, letting people in took longer. So I could be around people and be at the fun events, but I don't know how long it took me to get close friends out here. And even one of my close friends now, we laugh about how I didn't read the signs that she was actually trying to be my friend, and that I didn't know what to do with it. I was like, oh, you want to be like a close friend, like a real friend. Oh. So there was that kind of I don't know if it's separation anxiety, but just being away from my family and just really missing them. I didn't realize how close I was to my family until I came out here, and until I started talking to other people, and they're like, "You do what? Your parents are like what?" And I was like, "Oh, that's not standard."
Everybody don't have that. A lot of people don't.
Yeah, and I mean, and because it's not just my parents, but like their siblings. I come from big families. They're all married and they're in mostly good straits with their kids on like lots of both sides. And so I'm just like, that's how it is. And even in my friend groups, like a lot of them had cool parents. I didn't necessarily know their parents, but I knew that they respected and loved their parents. So I didn't realize that I appreciated it, but I didn't realize how much more I appreciate it until I came out here. And I just missed like being with them, having people who took all my stuff because they birthed me. And just learning relationships. I think out here was the most I learned about romantic relationships and really intentionally building friendships. And if you're in high school and college, they kind of happen. And those situations lend themselves to experiences that can build bonds. But out here, again, more intentional of the building those friendships, creating spaces to be vulnerable, having conversations that you actually have to share, like you don't have to share, but if you want it to really deepen at a certain point, there should be some sharing. Because I do know people out here who've lived out here and like, they're like, these aren't really my real friends. And I'm only just now realizing that because all we do is eat and drink in big groups. But, when the sun comes up and when I'm really down, I don't feel I can turn to them. And maybe they don't feel it and they didn't try. Who knows, if they tried to turn them, maybe they could have still reciprocated. But yeah, just isolation and depression, definitely. Anxiety has definitely been out here. But I've learned enough that I'm like, well, I don't know what my parents would do, but I'm gonna go ahead and use betterhelp.com and just like get me a therapist. Because I also realized a lot of people are going through things out here quietly. And so I don't just phone a friend off the bat. If we're having a natural conversation, I know this is someone I can be open with, and like they've asked me how I am in a genuine way, I'll divulge. But if it's just like, casual, or I already know they're going through something, I don't want to add on. Because for me, I knew growing up, I couldn't just listen. I wasn't the friend who could only listen and just like not want to help, not want to react, not want to do something. And so I didn't realize everybody wasn't like that. I do have some friends who they'll listen, they'll cry with you, and then they be good. And I'm like, that is a skill. I need to learn that skill, not to take on other people's things for them. That's a really good skill.
Self-awareness.
So yeah, it's been a journey out here, and the homesickness still strikes. But I've been better at, if I know I'm feeling isolated, I'm like, well, no one else is gonna know I'm feeling this unless I reach out. So I try to reach out, and I don't necessarily reach out saying, hey, I'm feeling isolated and depressed, come talk to me. I'm like, you want to go get dinner? And sometimes it's just the simple fact of sitting next to someone else and laughing. That is enough. And that'll hold me over for a week or two or something. Or just getting out of the house, getting out of my head. Yeah.
Thank you for the honesty and the candor, and the
Oh, yeah.
self-reflection. That's one of the things when, I think that I've noticed is being out here. My dad says this all the time: a closed mouth don't get fed. Nobody's gonna read your mind. And the things I'm sharing with you, I definitely experienced myself. We have to take an active role in seeking the healing that is available to us. And that can look very different for everybody. And one thing I do often tell people is a lot of times we do get in our way when it comes to getting the help that we need. And that, again, that help can look very different. I've learned to ask, are you in a space where you can kind of hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that stops me from not sharing. Because somebody they may have the bandwidth. Yeah, let's talk. What is it? And some may not, and that's okay. And they can show up in other ways, or we can do other things to, be in community. But I encourage people all the time is don't get ahead of yourself and stop yourself from receiving the very help that's available to you. Because if you don't ask, you'll never know. And then we live in a place that has beautiful nature, lots to do, that has nothing to do with like going out and getting drunk and all of that stuff. Because you're doing too much of that, you're running from something. Right now, there's a time and a place, obviously. But when that's your means of self-soothing, it's what are you soothing from? And one of the things I say all the time is nature. Get outside, take a walk. You are notorious for riding the bike. Because I'm gonna hop in a Didi. I'm gonna hop in a premium Didi any day.
I gotta stay moving.
Listen, I really appreciate your growth. That's what I'm saying. Beijing is gonna give you plenty of opportunities to, test your mettle. What are you made of, and how are you growing through this process? So, thank you for being honest and sharing that you have sought therapy. If you don't mind me asking, you obviously don't have to go into any detail, be comfortable sharing whatever you want. What are some ways that you believe that therapy has helped expand like your perspective and understanding of self?
Admittedly, I will say that I only did it for a few months. One, because not cheap. But
as a therapist, it is not cheap.
But it was super helpful through that I was having a particularly bad bout of anxiety, and it was really crippling. And I was like, I've had this before, and it wasn't fun then, and I know more now. Let's get help. And so it was a judgment-free talking space. That was really helpful. And then my therapist did give me some different tools and some different ways to think about things. Like one of the things I keep thinking about over and over was just the idea of, in this situation, I have a grievance. Am I going to be a peacekeeper, or am I going to be a peacemaker? And the peacekeeper is the one who maintains the status quo, even if it's not working for you or everyone. But it's like, all right, guys, is that I know, but like we got to get this project done. So, let's just, I know, but let's just get the project done. Let's just keep it moving. Whereas the peacemaker is like, okay, we need to get this project done, but if this is going on, this is going to affect our results. So I think we should stop and we should talk about it. And I know it's awkward, but let's, if you need to call it a safe space, whatever words you need to use, let's, hash this out so we can actually get an understanding and then push forward. And now that I actually say that out loud, it's very much a peacekeeper doing Umoja until I cuss some people out. So I should have been a peacemaker.
It happens sometimes.
Not my proudest moment. Absolutely not my proudest moment. It happened. I take ownership for it. I think I apologize. But things like that. And I remember I was talking to my mom about it, because I talked to her about everything. If outside of people who are actually my age, I talk to her the most about everything. And so I remember we were talking and I was like, she's like, oh, that's a really good idea. I should look into that more. And so peacekeeper versus peacemaker is definitely something that's played in my head, because I definitely would have avoidance of certain types of conflict. If I'm invested, I avoid it. It's the weirdest. I don't know if it's weird or not, but I'm gonna say it's the weirdest thing. If I'm invested, I avoid the conflict. If I'm not invested, I'll blow it up. So
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna go to therapy here because I can do that real easy.
I know. But so that one, and then he just gave me good perspectives that it's things I've thought about, but it's like, you know what, this is someone who doesn't know me. They're not saying this because they're my family or because they're like a good friend who really just sees the good in me. This is just like a person who's just like listening to the situation and is like, you need to make sure that you guard who's in, your life and who's in your space, because it sounds like you're getting ready to do new things. And I was like, ooh, yeah, you're right. And just remembering that. And it was funny, the therapist I had, while he would tell me things, and it's kind of because sometimes I don't listen enough, and I've been trying to do more intentional listening, but my brain would actually synthesize what he's saying really fast and come up with something else. And so the biggest takeaway I actually remember taking from a therapy session was remembering it's possible. Just that sentence. It's possible. I'm possible. And it's possible for me. And that, because when I was having anxiety, I was stuck in a lot of different ways. And so that was probably the best breakthrough for me coming out of therapy, because before COVID, I was definitely on the It's Possible train. And I was like, yeah, I can do this and I can do that. And it might be hard, it might be tricky, but it's possible. We can get it done. COVID was like gut punch, sucker punch, stab you in the foot. And I was like,
yeah,
it's possible for me to wake up before noon.
Still possible.
And then, so it gave me time to reflect. It gave me a safe place to talk, and it gave me some different lenses to work through. And it even just talking about it with someone who's not judging and has the bandwidth, it allowed me to think through enough things that they affirmed what I kind of was already thinking through. And so that helped me feel more comfortable again, standing up for myself and in myself.
Right. Feeling like you're on the right, not even the right, because I don't like right or wrong, but the healthier track.
The aligned track. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate, again, the candor and the honesty. So when you think about how mental health manifests out here or how it doesn't, or the options to support available here, back home, if you were to think about your best hope for the promotion of mental health and wellness, reduction of stigma in the future, I'm wondering, what are a few things, one or two things that you would hope for when it comes to that advancement?
So one of the things I remember, right? So one, I took journaling up a lot more, and I think a lot of people should journal more. When I was having bad anxiety, I realized, especially if it was relational anxiety, in relation to someone and something that was happening, even if I didn't tell them, I needed to write it out. And I realized that helped me a lot. And so when I was journaling, one of the things I was having a reflection on was that I just think Black men need so much more support than we are visibly giving them. And I say that kind of counterintuitively, because I think at least what I see is that there are more and more resources coming up for Black women. We're not shy about getting the help we need. At least I can say within the groups of people I know, within the social media pages I follow, within the podcasts I listen to, I see more Black women-led resources. But I don't see that many led for Black men. And maybe I'm not looking in the right places, but I do see a lot of Black men who feel frustrated as they become more aware that they need help, but not knowing how to express themselves or where to get help, and not feeling that they have actual support. And so I would love to see just more places for Black men. Because I do feel like affinity groups are helpful, where you feel that you are seen and heard. And I think it's easier to do that when people look like you and sound like you. I don't know if that's like necessary, but I do feel like at least it lowers some walls that might go up. If someone looks and sounds completely different from you, you might just automatically assume that they don't understand you. So I would love to see more of that. I think I even talk to you about that sometimes. I'm like, where are the Black men groups? You got any Black men groups? So I've just seen Black men that just, when they do share, they're clearly in pain, but they don't necessarily have ways or places to release it. I do know someone out here who started a men's Monday, and he did start a mental health group for the men, and that was really great. So I'd love to see more of that. And then just, I think the trend has already started where people are like, yeah, I'm not feeling great today. And that's not, I mean, it is what it is, and I'm going to deal with it in a healthy way. And people share that more and more. And as long as it's coming from an authentic place, I think that trend can continue. And I say authentic place because with social media, you never fully know, like, is someone doing this because, you know, it's a trend, or are they doing it because they really want to share in a way that lifts a stigma and opens up and makes a more authentic presentation of their life? That's why I'm okay with talking about it, because so many people see me from a distance and they're like, oh, wow, you just do everything and you do so much. And I'm like, bro, I come home and I sit on my warm floor and I look at YouTube videos until I feel like, okay, I can get up again. Like, I'm not always going. And I'm the first person to dispel that myth. I think that's why I was like, yeah, I took a nap. Like, and so just more honesty. And it can be just honesty with the people that you love, people that you trust, people that have earned your honesty.
I think that's where it needs to start.
Yeah. And just being like, I'm not like, hey, I'm not talking because I'm not in a good place. Don't ask about it right now, but I will get back to you. Or, hey, do you have the bandwidth to listen? I just really want to talk to somebody. And just being open. So I just have so many friends, including myself, who were going through something, we're going through it, and we just soldier on. And then we wonder why, like, people don't know. Well, we never told anybody for whatever reason. And so what is unsaid is unheard. So yeah, just those two things. I really want to see more things for Black men. I mean, probably all men, but the men that are in my life are mostly
start
Black.
home, right?
Right. But just more resources for Black men, by Black men, and just letting them find their own safe places and their resources so that they can be their fullest person. Because yeah, anyway, and then just authentic, honest conversation with people who've earned that, but not being afraid to not do life alone.
That's the key. It's knowing that alone doesn't mean lonely.
No.
And until you, and I'm still learning this. I think I'm a whole lot more comfortable saying no and being by myself lately than I have been ever. Until you can master like the art of healthy solitude, you're always going to be seeking to fill that void by somebody else. And that's not healthy. So with the suggestion that you said, like more resources for like men, more avenues, one of the things as a mental health clinician, a person that owns a business centered around mental health. And you know this as somebody that has multiple endeavors, right? When it comes to customer service, giving a service to people, people have to show up for that service when it is being offered. And the individual that is giving of themselves, because it comes out of a love for something or a need to be filled, that's a lot of hard work and a lot of time that goes into it for it not to be like accepted, right? So sometimes I share, if these spaces are created, y'all got to show up because we can't keep giving it to individuals that don't want it, right? And the thing is, the resources are available, but I've learned you also have to be, you are the one accountable and responsible for your healing. So it's like a feedback loop. The more people open up about it, I think the more individuals, qualified individuals, will provide that particular resource, and hopefully the more patrons are going to patronize that particular resource, and it'll continue to grow from there. And again, if you don't see it, be it. If it's not available to you, how can you collaborate, connect with individuals, licensed and professional individuals that are going to be able to provide that service to the masses? So yeah, I hope y'all hear that. If for the people that are watching, not just in Beijing, but around the world, they are out there. I have just a few more questions. So you've shared some of the things that you do when it comes to community impact. I'm wondering, what do you believe to be the most important thing that you've done or would like to do to continue to impact the communities that are important to you?
I think the most impactful, I don't know if it's the most important, but I would say if I took a bird's eye view of the last 5 years, the most impactful thing I've done was BlackEXPO, because it was creating a platform for other people. And so co-creating a platform for other people. And so other businesses have been able to grow and to get space and to get their own kind of shine through being a part of that platform. And I think we've worked with over 300 different businesses across the different cities. And so what I would love to do, what I would really, really love to do is to grow it, continue to grow it into an e-commerce platform, grow it into an actual incubator. So we're kind of a social incubator in the sense that if someone doesn't have a logo, my co-founder is an artist from Uganda. And so he would usually help people with their logos, help them with design, and be able to do that side of it. So kind of the baseline of incubation. And if anyone came to me with asking about strategy, I would love to just help them with that. But to really grow into not only a platform where people like just sell from, but a place where like how you're like, I want to start a business. Where can I go? And of course you can go to Google, but when Google pops up, you're like, these people look like me, these people sound like me, they know some of my unique challenges. Let me go where I feel like I can be seen and heard. And like we can become a destination for people who want to start businesses and grow. Because it's my purest belief that if we as a community want to continue to grow and to continue to progress, we need to have the economic power. And in order to have that economic power, we could either beg people to give it to us, or through businesses that are strategic and intentional and real, we can make it. And so that's what I want to do. I want to grow businesses that grow their communities. I want to grow businesses that grow their communities, because I think that'll have a very lasting impact on not only the business owner, but everyone that is connected to it.
I agree. That sounds like an addition to a mantra and a mission statement. I mean, I can say that I remember when I first was really floating the idea of doing an event, the mental health march. Lord, I was nervous. I was like,
do it.
I have all these ideas, and you were
choose one. Do it. Here's a venue.
Oh my goodness. And it really just exploded from there. So y'all, I can personally attest to her level of encouragement and push, gentle, careful pushing.
It ain't gentle, it ain't careful. Do it. Here's this venue. I told them we're coming.
And it was great. Like, it was great. So that's why, and not even just because of that, but that's why I will put up everything that she does. I will continue to buy from her. I will continue to tell everybody else to buy from her, because I know that I've personally witnessed the level of support that she's been able to provide to the people.
We literally were just talking about shea butter because my hands are ashy before the camera went on. You showed my product and I showed somebody else's product.
That's how it goes. It's that each one reach one, right? Pay it forward. That is what it's about. So I'm really grateful for the time that you've shared. We're almost done. I have a few rapid fire questions. Let's see how you answer those, right? So the first one would be, what's one word that you'd use to describe yourself?
Chaotic.
What? Okay.
I don't know, you said rapid fire.
I did. What's your favorite country? Well, I think you already answered this. Favorite country to visit now?
Zanzibar. Well, okay, Tanzania, because Tanzania is the main home country, but the territory of Zanzibar.
Okay, I want to go. I've always wanted to go.
Let me know. I'll go with you.
Listen, when the world opens up, we can make that happen because Wanderlust is definitely not going anywhere. What's one thing that you're passionate about?
Community, people, and people living their fullest life and owning that they can live their fullest life.
Yeah, giving themselves permission. What do you miss most about home?
My parents.
Yeah. I
made them my lock screen.
And what book are you currently reading?
Like 6. Surrounded by Idiots is the physical book that I'm reading. And then I'm reading a few other books.
Okay. What do you love most about your culture?
Sorry, the song that just popped into my head when you said that is the song that comes up every Black History Month for the last 3 years. I'm black on black on.
Girl, why was I thinking that in my head? Yes.
But truly, I love the vibrancy. I love the warmth, and I love the creativity. We are the baseline for creation, and I dig that.
Agreed. And last one, what is your favorite inspirational quote, scripture, affirmation that really helps to shift your thinking at the start of the day?
Okay, so it's my scripture for the year. Don't ask me to quote it though, because
loose paraphrase.
Loose paraphrase. I want to say it's Isaiah 43. Trying not to switch my tabs. I want to say it's Isaiah 43, but behold, I am doing a new thing. And I love that. But there's 2 versions of that scripture, because in the Bible, some things will repeat in the Old and New Testament. And I'll look it up later, but there's one that's like, behold, I am doing a new thing. I am making streams in barren lands. Can you, I'm saying it out of order, but can you not perceive it? I am making streams in barren lands. And I just love that because I don't know how many times I felt stuck, like something's not working. And you got God saying, I can make a stream in a barren land. I can revive what you thought was lost. Like, I'm doing this. And just because you can't see it doesn't mean it's not being done. And so when I tie that with it's possible, I'm like, it's possible. And not only is it possible, it's possible for me.
You.
So all the things that I want, the beautiful desires of my heart, it's possible. And behold, if it didn't happen before, behold, the Lord is doing what? A new thing.
A new thing.
So I'm here for it.
Yeah,
I need to look up what those scriptures is. My Reverend Mother might be disappointed by the time she
listen. Don't be disappointed because it's in her heart. Okay, we already know. Train up a child.
Yeah, I was right. It is Isaiah 43.
Okay.
See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I am making a way in the wilderness and streams in the wasteland.
That's right. You heard it here first. Isaiah, what was it? Isaiah 40?
Isaiah 43, verse 19.
Go check it out, folks. So, do you have any last words that you'd like to say before we close today?
Yes. Whether other people think this or not, I don't think I'm so exceptional that if anything that I've said that I've done is not something that you can't do. So if anything that I've said or that Kendall has said has inspired you, remember it is possible, and it is possible for you too. And may it be a jumping off point, not a copying point, but a jumping off point for you to think, dang, they've done their possible. What is my possible? And what you have now is what you need. Like, what you have now is what you need. And as you are moving in alignment with your God-given possibility, whatever else you need will always come. It might not come easy, might not come fast, but it'll always come, and it'll come on time.
Thank you, ma'am. I am. Listen, I hope y'all got that. The little nuggets and gems, not even little, very poignant and to the point. I'm so grateful for you spending this almost hour and a half with me in this very intimate and deep dive into your life as an expat, how you are managing, thriving with your mental health, impacting your community. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be able to share with not just myself, but our community. Thank you so much. And to everybody out there that's watching, I just want to say thank you again for tuning into Black and Abroad. I encourage you to keep taking risks, impacting your communities, and prioritizing your mental health. Please share this episode in the series with your communities. And just to reiterate something that Olivia said tonight, understand and know that anything that you want is possible. So with that, we are going to sign off. Have a good one and peace.
Bye.
Bye.